Jourdan Rodrigue here from The Athletic. She's laughing already. She's wearing wired headphones, which I said Cam Ward also does. It is the new trend she told me Aaron Rodgers does. I had not seen that before. Is this a statement from you?
No, I knew you were going to do this. I said, I'm so scared people are going to think that I'm making some sort of Rodgers influenced comp.
Yeah.
This is not the case. Keep me as far away from anything about that as possible, please.
Okay. So the statement you're making is that you just don't want to buy AirPods.
I don't know how to connect them to my microphone. That's the statement that I'm making. I have them. They're right next to me, but I don't know how to put them. I don't know how to do things, Kevin. I don't.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot of data on that. We've been on the show before. You did Finding Rams this time last year, where you went and embedded yourself with the Rams personnel department. We learned a lot about that. We used some of that for our Les Snead interview a couple weeks ago because it was so insightful. Then before that, you did the play callers. I was thinking earlier, and maybe it's just a coincidence, or maybe it's just owners who see this, but like we're doing NFC tiers. Those play callers, they kind of define the NFC right now, with the exception, I guess, of Sirianni. But it's like McVay, Shanahan, Kevin O'Connell. Like, is there a tenuous Ben Johnson link?
I think
Jared
in the
Goff,
fact that
Jared Goff taught him ball.
The tenuous Ben Johnson link, I think, is Ben Johnson is so anti that entire tree to the point where he's like making subtle references about like, I don't have a famous last name at his opening press conference, taking subtle shots, not so subtly at Matt LaFleur. Like, I think he's like we needed a character foil, and like it can't be Dan Campbell because he's too awesome, right? And Nick Sirianni goes into like the wild card character foil, like he's like the Joker character that emerges later in the plot. But the true actual character foil, I think, here to this tree is Ben Johnson, like because he is like your typical character foil, not the one who could bring just once chaos like Nick Sirianni might down the plot. It's summer. I need to fill my brain with things.
Yes, so. I can tell. Again, I can tell all of this stuff. We're doing NFC tiers. Here are the tiers that I wrote out. And if you want to add in sub tiers, go ahead. I was happy. You can tear up the tiers. You can reject tiers if you want. But here are mine. We're gonna go from worst to best. Bad and sad. Bad but not sad. Wild card contenders. Division winners. Eagles tier. So, and the Eagles tier isn't just going to be like if we're doing those like S tier things, like the big chart makers. Eagles tier can include teams that we think are in the mix to be as good as the Eagles. But if you win the NFC in the way they did, and you have the roster they did, and you have the operation they did, you get your own tier. So we can put other teams on the Eagles tier. My guess is the Eagles are on both of our Eagles tiers. That'd be funny if you were like, actually.
No, I can definitively say the Eagles
on division contenders.
Yeah, what if I put like bad and sad, but like for totally different reasons than what bad and sad actually mean? Yeah.
Let me ask you this: do you find, as someone who normally looks at things from the Rams lens, but obviously you look at the entire league, do you think the NFC is getting deeper? Do you think it's getting like how do you even handicap this right now going into September?
Yeah, I do think it's getting deeper. When I was kind of going through this exercise, I was looking at the teams that I would put in like the lower tiers, and it was actually hard for me to, even as I think I'm a tough grader, but it was hard for me to truly like leave teams in that state because I think they're all but a couple of them, and we'll get to that, are ascending. Like they're trending in the right direction. They have, and you can understand what their leadership wants from them. You can understand what their process is. I think overall we have a ascending group of coaches across the league. I think coaching is just getting better in general. And so I think that's what's interesting about this. It's making a really great division even better in my opinion, because of the quality of coaching and the openness of process that we're seeing.
I agree. I think there's only two bad and sad teams. I think.
Me too.
And, okay. I think it might be the same. It'd be really funny if they're, again, it'd be funny if you just threw in. I mean, you know what? There were a couple I thought about. No, there were a couple I thought about. We'll go through it. But all right, give me your bad and sad teams.
My bad and sad teams are the New Orleans Saints and the New York Giants, but for different reasons.
Okay.
So
you have the floor.
The New Orleans. Oh, we're doing a podcast. Like, you want me to talk about my opinion?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, cool.
you can talk. It's okay. There's only two of us here.
I feel like when you pay for a problem to go away,
Yeah.
and like, you are a bad and sad team in general, no matter your status elsewhere. But the Saints already had roster questions to the point where, like, this was just another thing. The Derek Carr situation, paying him to go away quietly, like, this could have gotten
Yeah.
really messy. The whispers coming out of there could have gotten really messy. It could have been even worse than it actually is. There could have been some looking into the situation in general, but they sort of were just like, okay, you don't want to be here, and we want this to go away, so here's $10 million. And so
Yep.
it's kind of this thing where that was just another thing that the Saints have been dealing with over the last couple of seasons. And I like the Kellen Moore, Brandon Staley combination. I think that's a little bit spicier than it gets credit for, because as much as he can be criticized for the tenure with the Chargers, and rightfully so, I do think Brandon Staley's a good defensive coordinator, and he works with Kellen Moore. But I also think that Kellen Moore is going to be unproven, obviously, in this space. And he's still got the sort of specter of the previous roster, plus the front office sort of looming over him as he tries to navigate and like rebuild this team, which is in need of a rebuild, and to get younger in different areas. And oh, by the way, still doesn't quite have its quarterback situation settled.
All right, I'm going to go in on the Saints for a second. First of all, Drew Brees the other day, I guess there's some charity thing, and this happens in every market where the guy from the glory years has to comment on the current team, and I do not envy those guys in this particular situation. So Drew Brees said he's not giving anybody the starting job because you're asking about Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler or whatever, but then he compared Tyler Shuck to Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill plays like every position but quarterback. Like, that's not the comp you want to hear. They might be the same age, frankly, at this point. I'm not even sure. I don't know. I still don't know why. You could convince me any age for Taysom Hill. I have no idea. And you could convince me any age for Tyler Shuck. So that's where they're at. With Staley, for me, I've always pushed back at the idea. So a lot of times you hire failed head coaches as coordinators, and they're somewhere between overqualified. Like you at least get a bump, right?
I don't think he's overqualified. That's my point.
No, sometimes you do. Yeah. But sometimes you do, and sometimes you, as long as they want to work, you get a guy at a discount, frankly, right? You get a guy, especially the year after he got fired, and as long as they want to work, sometimes maybe 25% of the time, they're burned out from head coaching jobs. They're not that into it. I don't really know Brandon Staley at all, so I don't know if that's going to be the situation. What I'm going to push back on before we even get to whether or not he's going to dive headfirst into this is, and obviously he was with the Niners last year, so, but he was in kind of a,
he wasn't really coordinating the defense.
He was like an advisor. Everyone thought he was the shadow DC, but he wasn't. I don't know. But when I look at this, I look at that Staley defense in Los Angeles with the Rams, where he gets most of his credit, and I say, well, he bragged a lot about being able to stop the run without committing people to that. He also had Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey.
Mm-hmm.
So that may have helped. I don't know if his super genius was the reason those two guys were good, or maybe those two guys and a host of others maybe helped a super genius persona. Maybe I'm just throwing out theories.
Yeah, but also, like, by the way, nobody's crowning this guy, just to be clear.
No, I know.
But
it just drives me nuts. I for like a month, I thought he was good when he was the Rams coordinator. And then I was like, wait a second, hold on 1 second. Like, I think he might be bad.
I think he's good, but I think he took the wrong job for him way too fast. And I think that he is more supposed to be marinating as a defensive coordinator, as somebody who has to do different things with different types of talent, which he did not do in Los Angeles. Yes, they had to install a completely new scheme. He had to explain it during COVID. He had to figure out how to get everybody rowing in the same direction. A lot of big personalities on that defense. He had to also get Sean McVay to buy into him, which Sean McVay is still bought into, like, the potential and the ability there.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, like, you had to marinate longer. You jumped too early at the shiny, what you thought was the shiny opportunity, and you had to eat crow afterward.
Yeah.
And I think that happens. Now, I think all of that is a truth. And I also think it's a truth that he is smart. He has been humbled, I think. And he also understands how to put a defense together. And so I think that's where this is really a prove it year for him in a lot of ways. And I think Kellen Moore knows that. And it's part of the reason you go out and get him. obviously they work together in Los Angeles, so he knows how he is to work with. He knows the power dynamics and all of those types of things that can sometimes be really tricky in a building. And I think he understands like this actually is advantageous for Kellen to go get him now because Brandon Staley has to prove that he's not a
Yeah.
one-hit wonder, you know?
Yes, I agree. A couple things. I forgot to mention this. Even if Derek Carr were there, it would be bad and sad. He's
Yes.
gone, and they've somehow gotten worse in the tier. Okay, so like even if they had Derek Carr, it would be bad and sad in a weird way, maybe even sadder. Now it's just like, oh, you don't even want to look at this thing. You don't even.
Yeah,
I don't
bad and
know.
sad and no Carr was like
Look
the
at this thing.
story of like
The-
2019 for me or something.
The other thing about Staley is that I feel like probably unfairly, I rip him because all media got branded as Staley lovers. And so I had
Yes.
to be like, whoa, that's not me. That's not me. And so now
That's partially my fault, actually,
oh,
because
yeah.
I wrote a feature about him when he was in Los Angeles, and obviously when all of that was happening, like he was having sort of this meteoric rise, and the defense was really great. And here was this guy who came from seemingly out of nowhere, and Sean McVay like handpicked him and moved into an entirely new direction with his offense and his scheme, and all of that's true, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't work out as a head coach, and he wasn't the caliber of the head coach that needed to actually lift the Chargers building and like sage the entire place front to back and sideways. And I think that that's where like, okay, people wanted to believe this, and I think people feel like personally offended that it didn't work out because they were so high on him.
Yeah.
I think that's a media problem. That's not necessarily a schematic problem, but yeah, I take some blame for that because I did write that.
If there's any other terrible narratives you want to take the blame for, the floor is yours. All right, let's do the Giants real quick. I can't believe we did that long on the Saints. The Giants, I think everyone's gonna get fired. I don't know how else to say that. I don't think Jackson Dart's gonna be good enough to save your job. I don't think that ownership. I think a lot of times when you take especially in the back half of the first round, unless it's Lamar Jackson, you're taking a quarterback to reset the clock, to say, hey, you can't fire us. Like, we have a young quarterback. And I don't think there's going to be any potential that is shown that's enough that clears that bar. I think that the plan right now, where you have Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson, I don't see many wins coming there. I don't see a very talented roster. I don't, I've said this before about other teams, but my biggest issue is that if John Mara goes in with Joe Shane and Brian Daboll and says, why should you keep your job? I don't know. Like, everybody points to last year's draft and says, oh, well, they crushed that draft. I don't think they crushed it to the point it's going to change their franchise. I think that you're overrating that because you're looking for something that this regime has done. And I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, I put them in the sad. I think they're going to be bad, but I also put them in the also sad category because I think it will be sad because we'll be counting games. I mean, the second the clock starts on their season, we're going to be counting. Is this going to be the one where they clean house? Is this going to be the one where they clean house? Is this going to be the one?
Look at the schedule here.
And that's difficult. They have a pretty hard schedule, and it does not really let up. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like Jackson Dart's going to start earlier than expected, because they have to basically, like you said, start the reset button on their tenure in a way that shows their work. Like, yes, hey, by the way, forget all the rest of what happened. Look, we found a quarterback, and also here is the special set of skills that we've always heard and seen Brian Daboll have, like, from afar, not sustainably in this building. Brian Daboll is going to want to show what he actually can do. Even if he knows the clock is running out on his head coaching tenure, he's going to want to put good tape out as the last tape you see before he goes and gets another job.
I agree. This is important. So they start out with Washington, Dallas, then they have the Chiefs, then they have the Chargers. No, I don't like any of those matchups. Then they play the other bad and sad team, the New Orleans Saints.
Just get there.
October 5th. Well, then they have the Eagles, and oh my God. After that, they go Eagles, Broncos, Eagles, Niners, Bears, Packers, Lions. Whoo boy. All right. Anyway, according to ESPN's little thing, the tickets thing, tickets start at just $44 for New Orleans, New York. I'm taking the under. I'm taking the under. Don't get in at $44. Is what has how I would
Yeah, wait till
I
day
would
up,
phrase that.
actually. Yeah.
October 5th. That's right around my birthday. Maybe an early birthday present. I don't know. I'll tell Emily. All
That's
right.
like in my price range before, you get on your influencer game that we were talking about off
Yeah.
the yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm there with a brand deal for Saints Giants. All right. It's also in New Orleans. That's important to note. It's not in the town that I live in. All right, let's do bad but not sad. We know what this is. They're not going to be very good this year, but there's something that fans can cling to. Some cope, some even if it's not real. And that's the one thing I want to stress here. Even if it's not like particularly real, if I'm a fan, I just want. They always say hope is not a strategy, but it is something to think about when you put your head on a pillow on May 22nd. You say, "Oh, if only blank." Give me your bad and not but not sad teams.
Yes, the Carolina Panthers is my
Yes.
first choice.
So,
Yes.
first of all, a graduation, because they have been on bad and sad for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
They're off this thing. Congratulations to the Carolina Panthers for being bad but not sad. Wonderful, wonderful job that Dan Morgan and Dave Canales and Brent Tillis and David Tepper, I think was it Quill Holler, where the PGA Championship was the other day. They've got something. I'm expecting them to be bad, but I'm expecting something short of the worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, they're going to be better, which is like, whoa, the Panthers, right? And I love their offensive line. I think they have a quietly extremely sound offensive line. Watching Bryce Young regain his confidence is like one of the purest forms of football fandom that you could possibly have, because who doesn't want to see that young man win? And then I like what they're doing with their offense. I like that they're sort of like troubleshooting in different areas with their pass game, trying to bring in different players that aren't necessarily the same types of skill sets that they'd always identified, or in, like I say always, like identified in that very short regime so far. Their defense is atrocious and has been atrocious. And similarly, I do believe that Ejiro Evero can still coach. And I do think that they know that and they believe that, which is why they didn't, first of all, let him out of his contract when he wanted to get out of his contract. And then second of all, kept him around. And I think that just getting him better players is a huge element to actually just even lifting the floor of that defense, because I think they're going to score points. What they really just need to do to get here, to get bad and sad, but then like get to like middle, like high in the bad but not sad tier, like almost okay tier.
Oh my! The way we're talking about this is unbelievably insulting to the franchise, and I love it.
No, I don't want to be insulting to them. I believe in them.
Here are the 8 things here are the Mission Impossible sequences that have to happen for them to be in the middle of the pack.
Someone from a front office the other day did tell me that I am endearingly condescending when I talk about teams' issues. So I'm like clocking this now. Now I'm very self-aware of this. So,
Beautiful.
but I do think like all they have to do is lift the floor of the defense, because I think they're going to score points. And this could be a really fun team to watch this year, because you want to believe in like the scrappy underdog that's taken forever to just get the wheels going again. And there's like this radical positivity throughout the building from Dave Canales, who wants to be like Pete Carroll. And I just think there's a lot of things to actually have hope in if you're a Carolina Panthers fan.
I agree. We've talked about this rebuild a number of times, and Bryce Young with Ted McMillan in particular. I forget where I read this, but basically like he's going to do Ted McMillan's going to do all the things Bryce Young likes to do. He's going to be able to go deep at contested catches. Like there's a real case to be made, and I don't love receivers that high in the draft, but there's a case to be made that he unlocks that offense in a way that takes them to the next level. And then we'll see about the defensive additions. I still just think if you're starting from zero, I've always said, again, this is talking about condescending, but like I've always said that I'm starting from zero with everybody. Like you had Derek Brown, who was out for the season last year for the second half, but like they didn't have any roster talent. And I've always said a good rebuild takes 3 years if you're starting from scratch. And you have to have proof of concept by the end of year 2. Have to. And what does that mean? That means either playing lots of close games. It means winning a game or two that you shouldn't win, which, by the way, the Panthers almost did last year. And with Philly, with Kansas City, like we almost saw that last year. I have to do that this year. I think you're going from 5 wins to 7 or 8, But I think you're seeing in November and December what we're talking about is they upset, a handful of teams who go, oh wow, like this is real. And I think people misunderstand what proof of concept is. Like just playing competitive football consistently, and then the
Mm-hmm.
next year you add even more talent, and everybody grows. They're going to be a young team with the exception of like Adam Thielen and some of those guys. I like where this is headed.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I put them here. And my next one, I
Yeah.
only had two actually in this category.
Okay.
And my next one is a bit controversial, actually.
Okay.
So I have the Bears here because I
Hmm.
think that they're going to need at least a year in the NFC North, like
Mm-hmm.
in as tough a slate as they're going to have, and as hyper competitive and frankly cannibalistic as playing against all of these teams can be, especially later in the season. They're going to need some time to like full reset all of the issues that this franchise has had, all of the problems infrastructurally that have just like set them back year over year over year. But the reason why I wouldn't call them sad. I think bad but improving is a good place for them to be because you have so much to believe in. You have the
Mm-hmm.
quarterback. Caleb Williams is going to be a star. I still firmly believe that. And Ben Johnson is such an edge to have for this team. He's got a long term plan, he's got a vision infrastructurally of how he wants to build out this roster. Ryan Poles seems to be all in on supporting him and giving him what he wants, actually getting it right this time, even though
Mm-hmm.
once again they've attached the positions and the coaches to each other incongruently, which has been part of their issue for so many years at this
I
point.
think it looks like Ben is in charge. I think that roster looks like Ben is in charge.
And it should. It should. This is somebody who has proof of competence. It should look like he's in charge. And so I feel like this is where
Proof of competence is a great phrase.
thanks. I feel like such an asshole today. Honestly, this is what you get when you get tears. I love tears.
Yeah.
It also
You
real.
get tears,
It,
Tears,
yeah, I
when
love
you have
tears. I cry
tears,
a lot, actually, Kevin.
Tiers.
Crying is healthy.
Mm.
But okay, so I do think that they're going to need at least a year, which is where maybe they don't outperform expectations. But I think if the Bears don't outperform expectations, that's a good thing because that's the reverse of the perennial offseason champions. There's such a letdown every season. I think it is totally fine to go into this season with low expectations on the Bears and watch them raise the bar for themselves and get out of this tier next year.
They're my wild card contenders. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, I just believe in Ben Johnson. I believe in the fixed
Proof of
offensive
competence.
line.
Yeah.
Proof of competence. I believe in the fixed offensive line because I just thought, and listeners of the show have heard this already, but I'll be very, very brief. A guy who holds on to the ball too long, putting him behind a bad offensive line, turns out that was a bad strategy. So now that's immediately fixed. There's going to be competence there. I just believe, I think Caleb Williams is a lot more talented than Jared Goff. And I know Jared Goff was further along when Ben Johnson got him, but I just feel like Ben Johnson can raise the floor so quickly with just things that he's going to be able to do, layups, right? Which is something Shane Waldron said he was going to be able to do, but he actually wasn't capable. There was no proof of competence with Shane Waldron. There's a reason that he didn't want to play for the Bears, and it's because he looked at this and said, this is a really bad situation. Ben Johnson's the type of coach who changes that. Now, having said that, were people saying the same thing about Matt Nagy coming from Andy Reid? Probably. It's it's different. I think that I've got this theory that people think Dan Campbell's a defensive head coach because of the way he looks. It's like, no, he played tight end.
That's a good point, actually. Oh my God.
He is an offensive
No, he's
head
not.
coach.
He's an analytics nerd. That's what people don't
Analytics nerd.
understand.
Yeah. But like, I understand the holes in the way I'm thinking. I just think they're going to be pretty good. I think they've got the skill guys. I think Roma Dunze is going to take a step in year two. And the defense has enough talent there to win a bunch of games. I understand. Like, I certainly wish this team was in the NFC South. I certainly do. But I think there's going to be enough. Like, what does wild card contender mean? It means in the last 2 weeks in those flex games, it means you're playing for the playoffs. That's how I view that. I think the Bears are there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I looked at this as more of like a teams that are on the way up.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Yeah. But I think, to be honest with you, I think the rebuild there, you don't look at it as quite as like dramatic of a rebuild because of all of like the surface level stuff that they do and did every year to make it look like they actually are a team with substance to it. And so I feel like this is where the depth of what they have to fix to me goes way beyond adding players in free agency in the draft. The depth of what they've had to fix is like how you run your building on a Tuesday versus how your quarterback develops actual habits that are productive versus like what he said in that Seth Wickersham article where he's just sort of like turning on the TV and like hoping there's some cut ups there. Like it is front to back organizationally, like again, building in a floor of extreme substance and actual competence. That's where I think it's just going to take a minute. And that's what I think. I'm doing actually Bears fans a favor here. Like I'm such the toxic boyfriend,
How
right? Like
generous of you by
I'm
calling
doing
them
you a
bad.
favor. Like
By
I'm
calling
doing
you bad.
I'm
Great.
doing Bears fans a favor because I'm setting the bar of expectations low
Great.
for them because I
Yeah.
believe they will exceed it.
You're doing them such a solid by calling them bad. That's wonderful. You and the Pope are the two most beloved Chicagoans this month.
I'm like really healthy to be around if you couldn't tell.
So I did not put the Bears here. I put the Dallas Cowboys here.
Ooh,
So
I
they
put
went
them in the
7-10
wild card.
last year, although obviously there were some mitigating factors there as far as health goes and all that stuff. A huge question mark with the head coach. Mike McCarthy, for all his foibles, he gets you to the middle. He gets you proof of competence. It's not much more than competence, and he certainly had brain farts in big spots, but he won a lot of games. You know what's funny is like he flippantly, when he was in Green Bay, flippantly said when his job was in the line, they were like, you know, how are you worried about it? And he's like, well, I've won a lot of football games. You know, the fact of the matter is I've won a lot of football games. And the media took that as like a sign of arrogance. No, like look at his record. He literally has won a lot of football games. And like, I don't know, at some point that's a skill. And I don't think he's as good as Matt LaFleur or any of these guys who replaced him or any of the guys that could have maximized Aaron Rodgers over his career. But Brian Schottenheimer was a product of a bungled process where they thought Mike McCarthy was going to take a shorter contract, that they could lowball him, all that stuff. Mike McCarthy probably thought he was going to get the Saints job or another of these jobs. And then all of a sudden, Brian Schottenheimer, who, listen, the door is open for him to be a good coach, but I've never seen evidence of it. And I think he's a really good, engaging guy. Breer and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think he's a really good guy. I think it's possible seeing some of the clips from some of these charity events that the players really like him, but there's a lot that goes into being a head coach. And I just haven't seen him earn that role. So I look at this roster, and what do we talk about the Cowboys every single year? They draft well. They have a base of talent. They never augment it in any meaningful way. George Pickens is not the difference between bad and division contention. And then you look at the Commanders in that division, the Eagles in that division. I'm seeing 7-6 wins again. They won 7 last year. I mean, obviously, you talk about health and all that stuff, but I'm seeing 7-6 or that range, and that to me is bad. I'm gonna just say this: they're closer to bad and sad than they are wild card contender.
Agreed.
Because if it goes that way, the way I'm talking, it's gonna be as depressing as it gets. A bad Cowboys team. First of all, they're in prime time. They're in your face. You're seeing Cooper Rush and those guys, and you're just saying, "What are we doing? What are we doing?" And then it gets more viewers than like the World Series.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because their like error gap is so massive compared to some of these other teams that we've plugged in here because I have them in the wild card because I have Shoddy as sort of an underdog. He reminds me actually personality-wise a lot. Him and Mike McCarthy remind me of each other quite a lot, just their personality and sort of the way that they see football and the way that people like being around them and all of that. I think we talk about failed coaches who are good coordinators. Matt Eberflus coaching that defense with all of its stars and all of its talent, I think does give them an edge that could help move them forward, especially in the tougher parts of the season. I don't know who is going to be their like go-to running back. They need to run the ball. They have not shown, again, proof of competence that they can do that on a regular basis to actually sustain the rest of their offense and to buoy up their passing game. But at the same time, I think, higher on Schottenheimer because I think he gives you the mean, similar to how Mike McCarthy did, with upside. And I think he's a bit of an underdog story here. I will say I have him, let me see if I can get this right. I have them closer to the bad but not sad and bad and sad than the Bears
What
are
just happened?
far
What is
from the wild card.
without a visual aid, our viewers have no
Don't
idea
you
what's
see
going
my
to
hands
happen. Like, people who are listening as an audio only just crash their car. It's like, what? She said what? I'm going to throw out two teams that I wanted to put in bad but not sad, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
One of them is the Atlanta Falcons.
Whoa.
I just think that the entire premise, as I've said before, the entire premise of the organization seems to be that Michael Penix is ready to win a Super Bowl now. You don't make all these moves unless you think, I mean, even like you drafted him, for God's sakes, in the top 10 after you committed all this money to Kirk Cousins. They've got all this money tied up with Kirk Cousins. I don't know how that situation is going to reveal itself. We talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show last week, where it's like, do they wait for the Sam Bradford injury? I don't know. But I'm looking at this team, and here's why I say it's almost a cousin of the Cowboys thing. Is if they're just mediocre again, if they're 8-9 again, bad is not the right term. This is why I'm not putting them there. Mediocre and sad, it would be one of the most depressing results. And Atlanta fans, God bless them. Me and I did this last week where we're talking about how I had them as a top 5 fan base and got them second. Me and I had number 1. God bless them. But this whole operation has the chance to go south really easily, and it would be one of the most depressing outcomes you've got. So I'm not putting them there. I think they're actually a wild card contender, but I just wanted to put them on sad watch, on disaster watch. They're on disaster watch.
Atlanta Falcons
I
are
am the
always
guy
on
at the
sad
beginning of a
watch.
disaster movie, reading the little lines and putting my glasses on my nose and saying, "We got to get out of here." Okay, I'm just monitoring that with the Atlanta Falcons. The other one, I like the infrastructure too much. I like the coaching staff too much. I like some of the talent too much. I am monitoring the Seattle Seahawks going from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold. I am there. Consider them monitored in Seattle.
Ooh.
They're on disaster watch.
Notice.
They're on disaster watch.
Okay. So I think I agree with you on the Falcons where it could all go sideways with 1 or 2 injuries. But I actually think their upside is really high offensively. Again, similar to the Panthers, as long as they raise the floor of their defense. And so I think with Mike Penix, and when you hear people in that organization talk about him, it is so exactly what you're saying. You don't have to agree with it if you don't want to, and that's fine, but they believe in him as like a long-term franchise, but like we're going to follow this guy into contention.
They're all set, like in perpetuity. That's why you make the trade you make. Like they think they have the guy, and what if you don't? Like somebody asked me the other day about the Miami Hurricanes. Wow, what a shocker. And no, and they were like, what's your concern about the team? And one of the things I said, it popped in my head, was the beginning. I think it's an apocryphal quote from Mark Twain at the beginning of The Big Short, which is like, it's not what you don't know that kills you. It's the things that you're sure of that just aren't so. Okay. And I wonder sometimes about this situation where like they're so convinced that they have a guy that everything else that they're doing is predicated on that. And if it's not true, they're screwed.
Yes, as are many teams who go all in on a quarterback. Yeah.
Correct.
It's the same model. Yeah.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
I just think for me, and I have them firmly in the wild card. I do have them on watch.
Me too.
Just
I don't
like
have them firmly in the wild card spot as I described, but I do have them there.
Right. They're being monitored. Yes.
They're being monitored for
but I do think that the capability...
They're on probationary wild card status.
I think that's fair, actually, based on our, the history we've endured with them. Despite yet another head-scratching move by the front office, I feel like this is a team that schematically, that in terms of its offensive personnel specifically, has such a high upside to just put a crap load of points up on people that at times you're going to watch that just carry. It might not sustain through the course of the season. We've seen this like with Miami, for example, but the way that they can run the ball and also the way that they can sustain like a high level of productivity with everybody staying healthy on that side of the ball, I think gives you at least several points in your favor and carries you into like securely in the middle for me of this tier of the wild card tier. I'm not ready to say, oh yeah, they're going to take a next step forward. this year. I just think their upside is such that that can carry them if they produce at the level of expectation. I think that can be really good for them. And I think as long as they can raise the floor of their defense, that cushions the blow a little bit for some of that like potential for things to go wrong.
We both had the Seahawks as wild cards, even though we're
Yes.
not happy about it.
Yes. Yeah, I want to buy into them because I love the defense. I love that they keep adding to it. I like how much it came together by the end of the season, especially. I think that they're going to continue to carry that progress forward. You have heard, Mike McDonald say, and also people from out of that tree say, like, it just takes a second year sometimes, understanding the language, understanding space, the way we're looking at space, and then getting playmakers in the best positions. And I think that's great. But can they play offense?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I just am not sure of, because the book was out on Sam Darnold by the end of last season. And I also think that like they did a lot in the draft. I think John Schneider had to do a lot to help sort of quiet the voices of fans about their offensive line. But is it enough? And is it specifically enough in the ways that Sam Darnold needs it to be enough? And that's where I have concerns.
Well, the biggest thing for me when you're talking about front offices is, like, the Ravens are a good example of a team where a problem doesn't linger for more than a year, right? I've seen John Schneider try to shore up the offensive line. There's a reason they haven't had a good interior offensive line in a long time. So like just doing something doesn't mean you solve the problem. I have to see proof of concept there. And as we talked about, Sam Darnold. All right, let's go through our other wildcard teams that we haven't mentioned yet.
Yes, I have the Cardinals here. I think they're on the high end of this tier. I absolutely loved their offseason. I think they drafted perfectly to fit their scheme. I think they signed the right players. Trey McBride extension, he is such a star. And I think Jonathan Gannon brought in the right players, Josh Sweat, for example, that give their defense an edge. And then elsewhere, they signed in free agency some like low risk free agents as depth players. Jacoby Brissett's like a sneaky, awesome ad for them. And then I like the way that these guys play football. I think that they're super physical and like smart. They are Dan Campbell on offense. Yeah. They look like they could kick your ass, but they're really smart. Like that's what they are. The Cardinals offense is. And then on the defensive side, they've been trying things and experimenting with things for the last couple of years to see, first of all, what they are and what they could be with a very talent poor roster, and then building that talent up as they went. And now they understand what schematically works and what doesn't work, where the pieces need to go, and how to attack. And I think that sort of experimentation and the runway to experimentation in that regard is something that's going to be so important for them to actually come out as the Cardinals team like we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for these guys to put all their good ideas, all the potential physicality, all the pass rush, all the scheme. We've been waiting for all of this to come together. And Jonathan Gannon absolutely has to make it happen this year.
I agree. I think Jonathan Gannon doesn't get nearly enough credit for the way they play on defense. Mike McDaniel was on the show talking about how the way he schemes up Budda Baker is one of the most innovative things in football. Budda Baker is one of the best players in football. Again, not getting nearly enough credit. Kyler has to be a little better. We've seen that. But I think the pieces are there. And the offseason, as you said, was great. I'm not going to be surprised at all if they have what they had last year without the collapse in December.
Yeah, and I have the Commanders as a wild card team. I would like them to be higher. I know.
Hang on.
I know.
Go ahead.
Okay, I expect a little regression. That's all. I think
From
that
whom? From
Commanders.
Everybody? No, I understand that, but like, I got it. I know.
From
we were talking about the team that we were talking about. Thank you for the specificity. No, like, what part of the Commanders organization?
I think that, okay, on the field, Kevin, the football that they play. I think overall, like, offense, defense.
Okay. But like, my thing is,
I don't think Jaden Daniels, you asked me a question. I don't think that Jaden Daniels will regress specifically. I don't think that, I think that teams will try more and do more to try to problem solve against the collective offensive attack, right? So that's where you can look at the insane, incredible league-leading numbers that they put up across the board as an offense, and you can naturally expect, okay, teams are going to throw whatever they've got now at this team versus potentially underestimating them, which I think they were very underestimated through a lot of last season because it's the Commanders. I think that I still have questions about the age gap and the overall build within their defense. And I think that, they play so hard for Dan Quinn and he's building a really special culture. This is a team that I think has like an unlimited ceiling. I think they have a championship ceiling, But I'm more so putting them here because I think if your floor is slightly regressing from your run last season, you're in a really good spot just the second year into an organizational overhaul. And so I wanted to be fair to them
Yeah.
contextually of saying, this is your floor. This isn't necessarily where you are, but this is you at your worst as a wild card team. And I think that's pretty dang good.
So here's why I don't think there's going to be regression. I looked last year at CJ Stroud, and there's an obvious reason there was regression, which is they completely bungled the offensive line, and they married that with an offensive coordinator who it sounds like just didn't know how to protect them. Like didn't know how they should. This is all above my pay grade, but like the shifts and the way that they were able to. What did Chris Sims say here? He said like they would just show blitz on the left and that would destabilize the right, then they'd come from the right and there was nothing they could do about that. If that lingers and that shows up on my show, it means you're a bad offensive coordinator. Okay, if that exists for the entire season and Chris Sims and I are laughing about it, you probably should make an adjustment. Okay, all right, sign a fullback. All right, but I'm looking at the Commanders and I'm seeing Josh Connerly drafted, who I think is going to be, if not instant impact, just really
moving
good.
him from his dominant position to his off position. Yes,
I think he's very good. We saw the Adam Peters thing where Cliff Kingsbury just wrote "stopping by, missed you. Please draft the Oregon tackle." It was very beautiful. Jalen Lane, I think instant impact guy. Trey Amos, instant impact guy.
Love that.
And I don't think I think the Deebo Samuel move is probably not a needle mover. I don't think that's going to change much. I think there's a reason he was available. Laramie Tunsil, we'll see. Some of these guys, when they become available and they're on their second or third contract, there's a reason for it. But I don't see a structural flaw like I saw with I didn't see what that developed with the Texans last year, which would be the most similar regression in year two. And also, by the way, this is not to rule CJ Stroud might be awesome this year. People have been saying that. It's just a matter of fixing those holes. I think that Washington was kind of proactive in that regard.
I think it's slightly different types of regression, to be honest with you, because the CJ Stroud stuff, like they almost took stuff away from him. Like he is at Ohio State, and then certainly coming into his rookie season, he showed and he made it really clear with his play and his ability in the film room. Like he can handle a lot. He can have a lot of responsibility at the line of scrimmage. He can do all of these things. But it almost was like they dumbed everything down as trying to fix something that they were really reaching in the wrong direction for the fix. And I'm just saying, and I think that's why the entire group regressed, is because not only were you like limiting your absolute star phenom quarterback in terms of the full like breadth of his powers, but also you're putting him under duress because you're not looking in the right direction schematically of how you can fix things that also set him up to do the things he does well before and at and after the snap. And you're more so saying, let's fix this with scheme. Your scheme was wrong. It was bad. So you can't fix it with scheme. And I don't think Washington is a regression candidate in that particular context. I think that they're only a regression candidate because I think teams are going to want to do whatever. This is now becoming a team where you need a bespoke defensive game plan to stop this offense. And I think that is the caliber of team you're looking at here in Washington. And that is tough for a team to go through in its first year in having to face that. And also, again, its second year in a complete organizational and roster overhaul that does still have some holes in different parts on both sides of the ball.
You make good points.
That's why you had me on the show, Kevin.
That is why. So you have
not because you couldn't find anyone else, but because
Yeah, Josh Allen canceled. You were number one.
You made the same joke the last time I was on the show.
I don't remember that. It was a good joke. That's why you do it.
Great joke.
You know the whole thing about how Seth Walder was on like 3 straight times after Josh Allen, just because I was like because we'd have Josh for like 10 minutes. Because you get a lot of time, and I'd be like, "Oh, we need to fill this episode out. Let's get 20 minutes of Seth Walder," and it just kept happening. And I just completely subconsciously, I would just be like, "Seth, will come on and give me some good stats, then we'll round out the episode." So at least
I have to know what Seth's Pavlovian response became to that. Like, what was he doing once he shut the computer screen?
He was good. He wore an analytics hat one time that just said analytics. He was great. He's Gucci. All right, let's go through the wild card list for the rest of the time. So
that's it for me.
That's it for you. Okay. I had the Niners here.
Okay.
I think they were old and injured last year, and there's still the high possibility that they're old and injured next year. So I don't, and I'm not being flippant. I'm just saying, like, we know what they can do, and I think the Brock Purdy conversation eats itself. I said this with Darlington the other day, where like, oh, is he a top 10 quarterback? Who cares? With Kyle Shanahan, he can play like a top 5 quarterback. He's going to be have a yard per attempt more than anybody else in active in football once he qualifies, which would be this year. So we know that. But then I'm looking at everything. They have to hit on the draft in order to be a division contender.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for me to say, and they have to be really healthy. So it's hard for me to put them in the division because it's a lot of ifs, and it'd be unfair to me. It'd be unfair to the other wild card teams who also have ifs. If I didn't put this big if team in the wild card race.
Big if team.
It's a big if team. Yeah. Like no one thinks about the Niners as a big if team, but they need health and they need the draft to go well. Like,
yeah,
we've seen enough seasons where they're not healthy, and Kyle Shanahan doesn't exactly grind out the Mike Tomlin path. He doesn't exactly grind out 9 and 10 wins.
This is the most self-aware version of the 49ers that I've seen since probably Kyle got that job. Because I think what they're doing is they're telling you with the way that they're retooling on the fly. First of all, they're totally copying the Bucs, the Ravens, the Rams. They're totally copying the blueprint by those quick rebuild or quick retool teams, especially when those teams have known edges. And what I think the 49ers are doing is they're being real with themselves about where they need the rest of the roster to lift people up, which is going to be your point on the draft. And they needed to maximize the continuity that they had within their scouting department and within their front office and their coaching staff, and truly communicate about where their deficits were and where they were lacking. And I think one of their edges is coaching. And I think they're maxing out that because they bringing Robert Saleh back to me is huge for them, because nobody that they've had in that building since, other than D'Amico, but like that's again why he was so beloved there. Very few people can truly communicate with Kyle Shanahan.
Right.
This is the exact trait that I need from my 4th rotational edge rusher, and this is what I'm going to do with him, and this is why I need this. And Kyle will actually say, okay, cool, we'll go get you that guy. Like, very few people can do that in a way that you have to explain everything to him. You have to make your case and your argument compelling enough to where he like puts it on his whiteboard as something that they are going to go do. And that's really difficult. But I think that this year, after like being totally embarrassed and riddled with injuries and probably really burnt out, and he needed a nap through most of that season, like, you are becoming self-aware with where you're not and kind of how you have to tweak and adjust your model. So what I think they went out and did with these extensions with George Kittle, with Fred Warner especially, is they identified the outliers players in their core, which are Kittle, McCaffrey, and Warner. The outlier players, and Christian McCaffrey didn't play last year. He's going to be relatively cheap this year. They hope that he's healthy. But with those extensions specifically, these are outlier players who you need to put in various positions where they are going to lift in a ripple effect around them. You put Fred Warner at middle linebacker, that has an effect on your front, that has an effect on your coverage, and he is enough of an outlier to lift these young draft and develop players and to also communicate to them what it means to be in this defense and what it means to be on this team. George Kittle, same thing with the passing game and also the run game because of who he is as a blocker. And he, obviously Kyle finds his quarterback that he loves in Brock Purdy. So I think that this team is actually going to be a lot better than people think they're going to be, even if the start to their season is tough. And I have them in my division winner category as their ceiling. I don't think that's, I predicted the Rams are going to win the division this year, but I have them for the 49ers as their ceiling, because I just think that maxing out their edges are better than most other teams' edges in terms of coaching, in terms of continuity, in terms of the capability of their outlier players when healthy. I do agree with you. They shed talent, bad injury, they could totally collapse.
Yeah, and they lost depth this year. So we'll see how it goes. I wanted to put Tampa Bay in my wild card, even though they're going to win the division, just as a slight to the NFC South, but I'm going to put them in division winners. I'm going to put the Vikings in wild card. They just, again, you're breaking in a new quarterback. I really believe in JJ McCarthy. I think that floor is going to be so high. Are you going to win 14 games again? Like, I need to see that before I can say you're going to be as good as the Lions and even the Packers, even though they were significantly better than the Packers, even though the coaching staff is back, even though Kevin O'Connell is an awesome coach. I think he's one of the best coaches in football. If you have a new quarterback, we need proof of, as you said, competence.
Oh, what a throwback to earlier in the show.
Yeah, call back. I
like that.
I love
I
them
don't
as an
mind that.
organization.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I think it's fair for both the Vikings and the Packers to teeter between wild card and division, just because we're also looking at like the difficulty that it is to even get to that point because of their strength of schedule, because of who they're also facing.
Even though it's not 1-to-1, like how many first year quarterbacks have truly propelled their team into contention? Patrick Mahomes did it, even though there was a really good Chiefs team the year before. Jaden Daniels did it, obviously. Joe Burrow did not do it. CJ Stroud did it. Like it's just Lamar Jackson didn't play until December of his rookie year, or didn't start. Like he had that playoff game against the Chargers, was it?
So bad. 3 examples for the positive, 2 for the, you're making your own case here.
Most of them are negative. Most of them in the first year are just working out the speed of the game, all that stuff. And one of the things I think was heartbreaking last year, I thought JJ McCarthy was looking really good in preseason. And the biggest thing for me was that he didn't play a lot of football. Like these guys who come in now, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, they're throwing like 4,000 times in college because they're all fifth-year guys and they all had the COVID year and they all transferred a couple times or whatever. And Jaden Daniels, same deal. And JJ McCarthy of that group had by far the fewest throws. So he was going to need a while to catch up just as far as reps go at the college level at the NFL level. And he didn't get that last year because he was hurt. And so I wonder if that's going to take a little longer because the college game has changed so much with some of these guys. You think about a guy like Cam Ward, who was in a bunch of different offenses and threw a trillion times and I believe had more touchdowns than any player in the history of college football. You come into the NFL more ready because you've seen more things. And I remember talking to Vita Pitcher, the Commanders quarterback coach, and he was like, when you portal a bunch of times, whatever, you can see the development in front of your eyes. Like you can see it when you're watching tape. Hey, he couldn't do this. Now he does this. He was with this coordinator for 1 year. Then he moved to this coordinator. Like it's just a different journey. And JJ McCarthy had a very short journey. I think he played, he played 3 years of college and then left. Didn't throw as much as some of these other guys, and then had the same playbook what is essentially the same head coach who was offensive head coach for 3 years. So it's a more traditional journey than it was. It's more common 10 years ago than it is now. We'll see if he is in line with some of these other guys like a Bo Nix who was able to have instant success with a high floor. I'm not ruling it out by any means. I think the floor is really high. I'm just saying I got to see it.
Yeah, I think you make great points. And I feel like this is going to be another show. I'm already booking myself in. But
please.
I'll go after Josh Allen this time. You don't
Josh Allen,
you can
welcome to the show. Well, we could do like the Matt Damon, Jimmy Kimmel thing and be like, Josh Allen ran out of time. Sorry. Right at the end of this thing.
But I think it's interesting. We're reaching an inflection point between too old of a prospect and we don't care so much because we like how much football he's seen.
Right.
And I love that. I love the study of like, okay, what are the factors? Obviously with like a Tyler Shuck, for example, not as high caliber or high profile player. Also the injury issue has been huge. But I found in my pre-draft process this year, I heard from less teams that cared as much about how old he was versus, they would rather have somebody who sees a lot and then you sort of just take the injury risk with what it comes because you think you're still, if you can max out your offense for 10 years instead of 15, now you're looking at, okay, that's still a good chunk of time in which we have somebody who's already ahead of the curve or ahead of the rest of the classes. So I think it's an interesting conversation, obviously, for the future. But
so JJ McCarthy threw 713 times in 3 years at Michigan. Cam Ward, just at the Division I level, so not counting Incarnate Word, he spent 3 years at Division I level, 2 years at Washington State, 1 year at Miami, threw 1,400 times. That's and we're talking about similar numbers for Bo Nix, Michael Penix, all of those guys. They played 5 years A lot of them started 4 different places, and they just threw over and over and over again. JJ McCarthy didn't do that. That's my if. And again, not saying he can't do it. I'm just saying before we throw him into the division winners or some of these other guys, I'm hitting pause. All right, let's do division winners.
Oh, I was halfway there anyway. So
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I started
49ers.
doing wild card teams in bad but not sad because I was trying to throw in the Seahawks. I was trying to put the Seahawks on probation.
Well, they're being monitored. That's the
They're
thing.
being monitored.
That's like,
all right.
Yeah.
I'll do mine. All right. So I've had a really hard time with the Commanders. I wanted to put them on the Eagles tier, and I'm not going to do it because out of respect to what the Eagles roster looks like truly, like you just look at the Eagles roster and you go, oh, even though I think pretty soon, and I don't understand what the hell is going on with Jalen Hurts debate, where Eagles fans think he's like a top 3 quarterback, and he's not. He is a really good quarterback who had an amazing Super Bowl, obvious top 10 and not 10, but let's just take it easy on this stuff, okay? Jaden Daniels soon will be more valuable, and probably as I'd probably take him this year. I don't know. He probably had better numbers this year. I don't know, but it's not about stats, by the way. But when I look at everything else and I say, "Ooh, what if Josh Conerly does this?" Well, look what the Eagles have. They already have it. They have like 8 guys who are Josh Conerly. Okay, and then you look at Trey Amos. Okay, they've got 6 guys who are Trey. And it's like the gap is so huge between the Eagles and the Commanders specifically. Now, they're not alone on the Eagles tier, but I had a really hard time, even with how good I think Jaden Daniels is and how good I think the Commanders are going to be. I have so much respect for that roster that dismantled the Chiefs and how good the Howie Roseman era has been that I can't put them on the Eagles tier. They're a division contender, and I feel bad about it.
I think it's fair.
You had it even worse. So, I mean,
I had their floor as the wild card. I think their ceiling is going to the Super Bowl. I mean, it's incredible. So, you're not going to put me in a box here today.
No, I put
Kevin.
you in a box, pal. You are in a box. All right. The NFC North teams. Again, I wanted to put the Packers on the Eagles tier because I'm an idiot. Because I do this every single year with the Packers. And then I'm looking at it and I'm just saying, again, ifs. There's too many ifs. They need a wide receiver to pop again. They need a couple wide receivers to pop. They need, if it's not one of those 5 guys from last year, then they need one of their draft picks to hit. That's an if. They need their athletic defense to climb a little bit higher in every aspect of the game. Jordan Love needs to get a little sharper. Like I see it all happening. But again, out of respect to what the Eagles, I have such a respect for the tier that I invented. I have such a respect for the parameters of my show that I have to put the Packers on the division winners.
Yes, I have them here too, firmly, because I think the ways that they could, all those little details that you mentioned, if they do the opposite of that, it's still not the end of the world for this team. Like, even if Jordan Love gets just a little more erratic, right? And then figures it out the rest of the season. Even if the defense has a couple of down weeks and then figures it out. This is a problem-solving team, first of all. We saw that all year last year, led by Matt LaFleur, what he was able to do when there were injuries. And like this team is so it's so malleable with what it has. And what I think is important is like they don't have a massive gap between what if this good thing happens and what if this bad thing happens in terms of the results. I think that they are firmly in division winners tier for that reason.
All right. I think we both agree the Bucs are division winners.
No, I put them in Eagles tier. Yeah.
What? Oh, hold on. Hang on. All right. Let's not. I'm going to finish division winners and then we're going to go through it. Okay.
Yes.
You have Falcons in wild card, right? Or division winners.
Okay. Do you want me to read? If we need to pause this. Yeah. Do you want me to read my?
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So division winners, I have Rams. I did put the Vikings here. Packers, 49ers, and then wild card, I had Falcons, Seahawks, Cardinals, Cowboys, Commanders. Could easily see the Commanders bumping up out of that and the Vikings bumping down.
Okay. So we have some some serious disagreements here. Some serious disagreements. So explain to me Rams division winner, not Eagles tier. Because I saw a game last year where it looked like they were very close to being Eagles tier, and they're on my Eagles tier.
Yes, I think because even though they love their backup in Jimmy Garoppolo, Sean McVay absolutely adores Jimmy Garoppolo. There's still such a high variance of potential with this team between Matthew Stafford at his best, Matthew Stafford banged up and at his medium, and injured and not playing Matthew Stafford. I think their offense has a huge variance in that regard. And then I still have big questions about their secondary and about their sort of revitalized look at what they're doing at middle linebacker. They attacked one of their biggest problems, which was the run defense. They literally plugged Poona Ford in there. And I really like the way that they went about the draft. They plugged in like small adjustments to problems that weren't necessarily like season defining for them. But it was all the moves that a team in firm contention makes. And I think that this team is a Super Bowl contending team. But I also think their variance, and I've seen this over the last several years, their variance between what it looks like when they're really, really bad and what it looks like when they're really, really good. It's such a massive gap between the two. And I wanted to put them in the Eagles tier because I love how they've built their roster. I have not been shy about that over the last couple of years. And I think
you were a big part of it. I think they ran when you were in the draft room with them last year. They were like, "What do you think, Jordan?" You're like, "I like this Jared Burr."
It's like do the opposite of whatever she thinks. But I do think that like they've improved most of the areas where they need to improve. Where they still are, I have big questions is how they're going to defend the explosive pass, how they're going to defend quarterbacks who work out of structure and avoid their pass rush, and then move the ball down the field through the air specifically. And that really killed them in all the games they lost last season. That was one of the most defining points. Other than the run defense being as bad as it was, that was one of the most defining elements of why they were so vulnerable was the secondary, and they really did not do much to fix that.
Okay, so you're a far more knowledgeable Rams expert than I am. I think a couple things. Number one is I think the way the defense is set up, I keep talking about right? Or teams on the ascent where they have to prove something. I think the Rams proved they were a young, explosive defense that's going to be really good next year. I think there's a lot of ifs on the team. And you mentioned the backup quarterback or quarterback health. That's every team. That's every team. We saw, I think Jalen Hurts was banged up 2 years ago, and we saw what happened. They were in a tailspin they couldn't get out of, and there were certain things Hurts couldn't do. So I won't nitpick that. But when I see Stafford, and assuming he's healthy, when I see the way they've built the skill guys, when I see the defense with Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and Cam Kitchens and all of these fast guys and the way that they're able to generate pass rush from a bunch of different guys, I just see ascent. I see nothing but ascent. I see nothing but a linear.
I agree with you.
Super Bowl level team this year.
This is a team that is very clear about its intention. It is going to make a run. Getting Matthew Stafford back sets forth the domino effect of everything they wanted to do with their A+ plan. But similar to my point about the Commanders, I think this is their floor. I think this is the worst case scenario for this team is that they are this quality and caliber of a tier because of how they've rebuilt their roster, because of the talent they've identified in the draft over the last 2 years with 10 starters and probably more coming into this draft as well. With the quality of quarterback in Matthew Stafford when he's functioning at his most Matthew Staffordy darkness, king of darkness, like best. And I think that this passing game is going to improve and actually be more three-dimensional and more layered than in previous years. And part of that was they were dealing with injuries. So I think all of these things as a positive for this team, like we're not actually disagreeing. I just have them in this tier as like a worst case scenario versus what I think teams have shown over and over again in the depth of their roster build, in that Eagles tier. That's what I was kind of looking at in that Eagles tier.
Just to be clear, if the Rams are good this year, I officially know more about the Rams than you do.
Okay, deal.
Yeah. You're off the beat. I'm the new. I'm gonna have to move to LA for some reason. I don't know why I'm doing this. What just happened? Now I'm all of a sudden.
You took my job.
Yeah. What the hell?
Yeah, we'll switch. Yeah, we'll switch. How about that?
Deal's off.
How much do you get paid?
I'm on the Stafford deal. So just what I just like market value for me. Just you know, they're always like, oh, this guy is going to reset the market for this guy. For whatever reason, I just told Disney to give me the Stafford deal, and that's what I got. So there you go.
High cash flow. Good for you, buddy.
Yeah, positive. That's it. A lot of year one cash flow there. All right, let's talk about the Eagles tier. So you have the Bucs. I have them the division winners. Explain this to me.
God, I love the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, man.
I can
do.
tell.
Like year over year over year, I think, especially of late, Jason Light, the ways that he's had to like shapeshift this roster and rebuild this roster and win with this roster in all different types of team build, like it gives me so much confidence in this being a team that like knows what it's about. And the depth at key and important places on this roster. The offensive line is one of the best in the NFL. If the Eagles' offensive line and the Lions' offensive line, two others in this tier, weren't as absolute superstar as they were or as they are, we'd be talking about the Bucs' offensive line so much more than we actually do because they are an outstanding group. Their run game is ascending. It was very good last year. It's going to be even better this year because it's on that upward track. They have a top 3 receiving core and actually deeper than some of the top receiving cores in the NFL. And they're quality at almost every position on offense. Even when Baker Mayfield had to run the entire show through Cade Otton produced. And Baker Mayfield, by the way, is a guy that you're not going to ever say he's like a top 10 quarterback, but he's a quarterback that wills his team to win in ways that when you go through all of the chaos of a postseason, you go through all of the one game at a time things that you have to plan for or can't plan for possibly for the postseason, you want a guy like Baker Mayfield who's literally has his team willing to like lay down their lives for him. And I think that's really, really important. I think Todd Bowles has the exact perfect personality for this team because he is so neutral all the time. And then when you have to go a full game against his defense, it wears on you in a way that not a lot of defensive coaches can actually take credit for and talk about. I do think that tackling and injuries were a huge problem with their defense last year. But in talking with, a couple people in that front office and all through the course of this offseason, that's something like, again, they're very self-aware, similar to what the 49ers, what I liked about how they did their offseason, like very self-aware team. And I think they are as complete an organizational model as possible in the NFL. And that's why I think they belong in this tier with the Eagles, with the Lions.
Great points. 10-7
Kevin.
And another December of them building the entire franchise around Mike Evans getting 1,000 yards.
Mike Evans, I love him.
Yeah,
it's great.
Oh, great. Yeah, 1,000 yards. I just think the Rams are better. I don't know. I think
I'd put them very close together, to be honest with you. And they have the edge. Rams have the edge in the quarterback for sure.
Yes, the talent difference isn't that significant, and if it is at all. And Matthew Stafford, I think, is a much better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. So it's not, again, we both of us have such huge respect for both of these franchises. It's not like I feel like anybody's trying to put them in bad and sad like I did with some of these other guys.
I know, and yet I'm gonna be the one that gets all the nasty texts, like,
oh no, what I think is that there's a lot of listeners or viewers of the show in the Rams facility, and you are screwed.
I'm so my key card won't work. Like I already know that,
All right. Let's do Eagles tier. So my Eagles tier, it's very simple. It's the Philadelphia Eagles, it's the Los Angeles Rams, and it's the Detroit Lions.
I like it.
I don't know. Again, I already went through the Eagles and just how much respect I have from that roster. I think the Lions are close, and I think the Rams are closer to division than they are to the Lions. But I think there's two teams that are just a cut above everybody else. The other teams I thought about putting in here, again, I thought about the Commanders. I thought about the Packers. There's just too much distance. I did not think about the Bucs, partially because of the quarterback.
Well, and because you personally hate me.
I personally hate you. That's correct. Mm-hmm. And that's about it. Like, honestly, I didn't really consider that many teams. I just think, again, the standard the Eagles set, as long as everybody's healthy, but they just stack talent. And the one thing that just impresses me is like good drafts lead to more good drafts because they never reach. They draft for value. They don't take chances in the first few days. They're so traits based, and that's the one thing I don't think people get is like when they add a guy in September, it's always a guy super athletic from the first round of the draft because they're betting on value. And it's not a million miles away. The Rams do this a little bit too. But it's
Yeah.
like, if they can do one thing, let's bring them in and see if they can do that one thing for us. And then you get good coaches and good process and good medical staff and all that stuff. And all of a sudden it works. And so I just adore their process. And it's really, really, really hard to get on that level. And I think only two other teams can in this conference.
I mean, I would say all of these things are fair. I would say the Bucs approach things a little bit like that as well. So if you're okay,
oh no, I know you would say that.
If you're okay with me allowing the Rams to bump up to this tier,
no, they are.
And okay. as long as we also keep the Bucs,
we're not. We have different. We don't have to be on the same tier. We don't have to be on the same balcony here. Okay, you can be in a different building.
No, good. I'm actually using you as a human shield.
This is unbelievable. No, it's too late for that. The listeners have heard it. All right, pal. This was fun. You can come on after Josh Allen next time. What are you doing at the Athletic? What can we read from you and hear from you?
Yeah. Well, I have I wouldn't say fun, but I have a big feature coming out soon. So can't really share more than that.
Is it on the Rams?
Keep an eye out for that, and I will share no detail about that.
This. I love this.
Yeah, catch me over on NFL Daily with Greg Rosenthal. Also over on Heed the Call with the Underdog guys. Have had a blast with those guys this year.
I'm not listening to Greg.
Well, that's your loss, Kevin.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I love Greg. Greg, I'm joking. It's one of my favorite podcasts. I've told him that in private all the time. Public criticism, private praise.
I was going to say, but you would never dare until I pressured you to say it in public.
Okay. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, Kevin.